Welcome back to A Fresh Story, the podcast where we have conversations about brave decisions to start over again. I'm Olivia.
And I'm Jenny, and we're so glad you're here today.
Hello, sister. How are you?
I am very good. How are you?
I'm okay. I have been deep in this place where I've been listening to the same music on repeat over and over again. I have this playlist that has Dustbowl Revival, who we'll get into. My dear friend Jane Kramer, who I'm begging to come onto the podcast because she has some great stories, and some Van Morrison. And I just sometimes in life you want upbeat, energetic. I love Mike Kelly and Meghan Trainor and all of them. Pink. But right now I do love Pink. But right now I'm in this mellow but funky place. And that's why Dustbowl Revival is right up there for me. I discovered them actually through my ex-husband years ago. And one of the best things I got from that marriage was some new music. So I'll be honest about that. And Z is the lead singer and I'm the founder of Dustbowl Revival. And he is one of the coolest people we've ever talked to. He has such an amazing personality. He is a writer and he is a father and a husband. And that's really kind of what we dug into on this episode is he had this really traumatic life experience happen when his wife went in to give birth to their baby girl. And she almost
crazy experience,
very
unusual.
much did not come out alive of that. And I, from this parasocial relationship conversation, I remember watching on social media as they lived through this, and there were updates from the band coming in. And it really was touch and go. And we talk a lot about this on this episode with Z about community, right? And how he was kind of in this place with a new baby in the hospital and how his community came to support him. And the relationship between the band and community and your fans and music. And it was just a really awesome conversation. And again, this podcast has given us the chance to talk to these amazing people. I've been listening to Dustbowl Revival for years, and to get to the chance to talk to Z was phenomenal. So if you don't know Dustbowl Revival, I'll link to some of my favorite songs in the show notes.
Super fun music. It's super
fun. They're my favorite.
And I think it was fun to talk to him too about the evolution of the music, the evolution of his writing, because he was saying that before this all happened with the birth of his little girl JJ, which I love the name JJ, that his music was about love and romance or how-break, but then you get into this really dark space, and a lot of beautiful music that we all love and know is written out of that really dark space, and
how they use their platform for activism. And they have some really incredibly devoted fans and followers. And so anyway, enjoy this episode with Z. And please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to A Fresh Story so that we can keep telling fresh start stories. Zach is a songwriter, playwright, podcaster, and the founding member of folk rock adventurers Dustbowl Revival. Since coming together via a hopeful California Craigslist ad, Dustbowl has played in over 10 countries and produced 7 beloved albums. The group's latest, Is It You, Is It Me, appeared in the top 20 of alternative sales charts and enjoyed features in Rolling Stone and Billboard. A new EP, Set Me Free, dropped in 2022, one of my faves. Zach began his music discovery podcast, The Show on the Road, in 2018. The show aims to introduce incredible artists to new audiences and focuses on giving fans a sense of what it really is like to tour the world and play music 200 plus days a year. 125 episodes strong, the podcast has been downloaded nearly 1 million times. In 2022, Zach launched his first radio show, the Sway Out West Radio Hour on 88.5 FM, the SoCal Sound in LA, on Saturday mornings, where he showcases his favorite songwriters every week. And I'm super excited to chat with you today. I'm a big Dustbowl Revival fan. I have been following you guys for years. Before we started recording, was saying my ex-husband discovered you. He used to watch a lot of YouTube. And so I became obsessed with your sound. I turned all my friends onto it. So when I saw you had your podcast, I'm like, we got to get him on here, talk about everything. So thank you for being here.
I appreciate you having me on. I like to pride myself in writing songs where our shows, and this has happened many times, people get divorced. It happens.
Yep.
I'm sorry that it all happened for
good.
you.
It's great.
But it's a show that the wife and the husband, the ex situation, they both come to the shows with their new
I don't
girlfriends
doubt
and
that. I
boyfriends,
don't doubt that.
and then awkwardly talk after the show, like at the merch table.
Yes.
That
I'm
is something to
obsessed
be
with it.
proud of. I love that.
Because your
It's
music is so good.
I like to
It's
bring
just so
people
good.
together in weird ways.
So how are you doing today? You did say it was raining in LA, which it's not usually.
Yeah, we've had some crazy, really, disastrous weather for most of the state. We've kind of gotten not the horrible part of it here near the beach, but lots of flooding, and I mean, obviously the snow in the mountains has been beautiful to look at. But
from a distance,
we were supposed to go skiing for my birthday a couple weeks ago, and it got canceled 2 weeks in a row because literally no one could get in and out of Big Bear, up there.
It's
people
very
were
hard.
Stranded.
Yeah, as New Yorkers, it's hard to imagine a place that's not. First of all, New York is never prepared for the snow that we get here. They always seem shocked. But then to imagine a place where it's just not the norm, it's always fascinating to me.
LA is kind of a magical place weather-wise, where literally on my birthday 5 years ago, we went skiing in the mountains, and then a blizzard rolled in, so we left early and then went to the beach and went swimming the same day.
Why don't you take us back to the beginning of your Fresh Start story?
I think the one I'm going to focus on is when my daughter was born. A very recent fresh start. Talk about the ultimate reset button for your entire identity and life.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure if you know any of what happened to my wife and the whole situation, but it was a very traumatic and pretty frightening experience. Childbirth is pretty crazy in any context.
Yeah.
And I stupidly joked with my wife the day of 90% of the time you go in, you have the baby, you come out, and everything's fine. We have all sorts of friends who you go in, you come out with a cute little baby, and you recover and you move into your life in this new chapter. Except what happened, and I'll try to do the brief version, is that as my wife was getting a C-section, something went terribly wrong, and she started to basically bleed out and almost die. And they had to bring her into emergency surgery. They didn't know what was happening. She was just, everything was happening so fast. And thanks to the brilliant doctors at Cedars-Sinai and some quick thinking, and, I had to do a lot of the decision making because she was completely under a ventilator and not conscious. And I have an uncle in Pittsburgh. Shout out to Uncle Tony, who's a brilliant radiologist who consulted on some of the stuff at all hours of the night. And turns out she has this very rare 1 in a million syndrome that can be triggered often by birth. You can't detect it. You can't screen for it. It just happens. They don't know why. And there's this life-saving medication that did not exist 10 years ago that they were able to give her a day or so in, and she responded to it, and she's recovering and doing really great, all things considered. She's going to have this probably the rest of her life, but they are managing it really well, and you wouldn't be able to tell. She has one of those hidden illnesses, that it's and everyone's like, well, you look so great. It's I was on dialysis for 6 months. So how about that?
So you were in the room with her, obviously, when the C-section was happening. I have two questions. One is what was that experience like for you to watch the woman that you love going through that and be rushed out, if you would be willing to talk about that? And the other is making all of those decisions. I think a lot of us don't think about what marriage is when we marry someone. We think about the wedding, or we think about the relationship. I think it's very hard, much like having a child, to conceive of what marriage actually can be and has to be sometimes. And I wonder sort of the reflections that you had in those moments when you're making those decisions, and how that's affected the way that you look at marriage at large now. And if there was anything that you would have to say to somebody that was getting married that maybe you learned in those moments?
Well, I think you have to step up to the plate. I'm a big baseball fan. You have to literally step up to the plate with bases loaded, 2 outs, bottom of the 9th, with the World Series Game 7 on the line. And then you realize, oh, right, I'm not actually a baseball player. Like you have to make these decisions that you never imagined you'd have to make, because there's risks involved getting on this medication. It's basically like a infusion, like chemo, so it really saps her immune system. She basically gets sick every week or every other month, because the baby, and I love our little baby JJ, she is a little virus cannon. Especially at daycare. It's like sinus infection, stomach bug, like you name it.
Always pink eye.
My wife is a very healthy, person, except that she doesn't have that shield anymore. Right. And so I have to do a lot of the heavy lifting sometimes when she's laid out, and I feel for her because she can't control it. She doesn't know what to do, and in the moment at the hospital, I think it was just sort of stunned decision making, just being like, well, if this thing can save her life, yes. And it did, and there were phone calls between the doctors. She was in the hospital for a month, and there was a late night call, that was the toughest one, where the guy who was really spearheading her team was like, you know what, like, I have to be honest with you, I don't know if she's coming out of here. Because her lungs kept filling up with fluid. She had sepsis, she had pneumonia, she had, like, literally her chart, which she actually looked at the other day, because my wife is writing a book about her experience, because that's the way we roll in this house.
Us too.
The chart is like 4 pages long. Like, there were things that even they didn't tell us that she had that were so scary that they're like, well, we're not going to let you know that you also had blood poisoning.
Oh my gosh.
And blood clots on your heart, blood clots on your lungs, blood clots.
Everything that could have gone wrong was going wrong.
So it's a miracle that she's here. It's a miracle that the baby's here. So we're extremely lucky. And I would say the start was having my, I don't know, songwriting brain, my artist brain, almost have a completely new place to go. Because, before you have kids and before you have this sort of life or death situation, you're writing about love songs, you're writing about, politics. Dust Bowl's gotten pretty openly, political activist. And I feel like in the last 4 years, especially since someone got elected, I feel like the time for silence is long past. Like, you could fear losing fans, you could fear losing shows if you're not actually writing something that matters. Like, why are you doing it? Like, why are you here?
100%.
So I've been very passionate about gun violence. Is something that really affects me now, especially having a kid. You're like, these kids go to school and they don't come back home. I mean, it's very, very scary. And that people openly advocate for keeping it the way it is, and not only that, making it worse, having more leeway for gun owners. It's just deeply disturbing for me.
I hear you.
So we have songs that have covered that. There's a new song that I wrote when my daughter was about 4 or 5 months old, when they overturned Roe v. Wade. My little daughter was like the ultimate songwriting partner for a while there, before she could walk. Now she doesn't care, But when she was stuck in her little bouncer, basically I would just play at her for hours, and she was just so down to be like, keep going. More.
It is. So you were in the hospital, was your daughter okay? And then everything happened. So you at least had some.
She was in the NICU intensive care for like a day, but really it was just
Right.
like precautionary. Then they basically like, we can't keep her in the hospital. She's
No.
good.
Right.
Yeah.
I was
Like
gonna ask.
mom's basically barely making it, but little one is ready to go.
So you and the baby leave the hospital together.
Right. So we had to go home without mom,
Ugh.
and my mother-in-law came to save the day, and stayed with us, which was its own interesting journey for
A new
a one-bedroom apartment,
Yeah.
and
Oh God.
hanging out with your mother-in-law 24/7. But she
Yeah.
was, you know, she was there for us when we really needed her, and the baby and her love each other. And you know, she was also freaking out because her daughter
I was gonna say,
That's
right.
her
I was
baby.
gonna say,
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
So it was a tough, really tough month or two. But you know, the whole like it takes a village thing is true. I mean, a lot of my
Yeah.
friends would come and sort of, we would do this thing where I would drop grandma off at the hospital, and then I would just tool around with the baby in LA and just meet up with people in the park, or you know,
Yeah.
and it really helped me get through this really rough time, because
Right.
you know, if you can kind of talk and joke about it with your friends, it feels less dark and
Yeah.
alone.
Yeah.
Whereas like the late nights when the baby's not sleeping and mom is not there to help, it's like, man, that's when you start really losing your
Mind.
sense of self. I
Yeah.
mean, I
Yeah.
didn't sleep for weeks pretty much, you know, and I had to make the executive decision, which my wife didn't agree with at first, that the baby was not going to sleep in the same room as me,
Interesting.
because it is recommended
Yeah.
technically for the first, you know, whatever. And I was like, you know what? I'm a very light sleeper. Anytime she's moving, I'm up and
Yeah.
being like, is she breathing?
Right.
Yeah.
Is she
right.
okay?
Yeah. You have your hand over them. Yeah.
And so as I was starting to get delirious from lack of sleep,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, no, we're going to bring her into the other room. And then, you know, it really helped.
It's the balance between the mental health and the, you know, because you are not healthy, can't take care of the baby. That must have been so devastating for both you and your wife to not have. I'm sure that obviously not the experience you discussed when you were thinking about bringing the baby home. Like you said, you were making these jokes, you were making light of it. You'll go in, you'll have the baby, you'll come home, no big deal. Like, how did that just play out? I mean, was it just completely, I guess you just had to power through?
Yeah, I think in retrospect, it feels like a movie that happened to someone else.
Yeah.
Like it feels like 10 years ago, even though it was basically a year ago.
Yeah.
My daughter just turned 1, you know, end of January. So I think, I mean, man, it really goes to show that you can get through anything.
Yeah.
Like, I think as my wife is now trying to catalog what happened to her,
Yeah.
because she's a really good writer and a podcaster also. It's like kind of reliving what we went through and trying to like a detective piece together what happened. And you know, it's something that again felt like a complete identity shift and starting over situation. And of course the silver lining is that we have the cutest, most rambunctious, amazing little girl. I mean, she is rad, you know. I mean, my wife joked like, if I'm gonna almost die doing this, she better be a really cool kid.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
She is like,
she is. I follow
like,
you guys on Facebook and all the things, and she's adorable.
like, yeah, she's now like
Yeah.
more popular than me on social media, probably,
yeah,
you know. So
yeah, for sure.
So you mentioned this about finding a new source for creativity and for your art, and I'm very curious, like, yeah, there's a lot of duality in the situation, right? There was a lot of darkness, there was a lot of light. Like, can you talk a little bit about where that's taking you creatively?
well, I think things matter a little more, a lot more, maybe. I would say, you know, the hardest thing though is that being a musician, a touring musician, also creates its own set of challenges, because I have to leave mom with JJ when I'm gone, and I feel guilt and shame about that at times. because I'm out there having a great time and mom is working and then also trying to juggle this and not being fully strong enough to do all this stuff sometimes. So an example being, we played this fun series of shows in Colorado a couple weeks ago, and in the middle of the night on a Friday, little virus cannon, my daughter got that norovirus stomach bug. Was fine 10 minutes before, all of a sudden throwing up all night. Throwing up on my wife. Sorry to be graphic, folks.
It's parenting. It's real.
Yes, parenthood.
Yeah.
And I'm not there to help.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, this is really bad timing. And then next day she felt pretty fine. And of course, 2 days later, as I'm literally flying home, my wife's like, it's happening. Like it got me. So then I'm texting people like, hey, can you go help Taylor? Because like she can't physically hold the baby right now, And luckily we have this amazing daycare down the street, and they just went over there and helped her, basically,
Wow.
And then they got it.
Oh no.
And my sister, who came over a day before, she got it. And our friend who also came over, she got it. And her boyfriend got it. And then when I came home 2 days later, I got it.
Yeah.
That's life. That's life. And like, I have 2 boys. They're older than JJ now, but I was married to a musician for a long time. And I would be home often. And my sister here would come over and she would get whatever the kids had. So I very much understand that sentiment. What I love about what you said, and we talk a lot on this podcast about, marriage, like Jenny said, and equality and all the things. I love that you are performing and you're touring and doing all these things, but when things happen, you're also stepping up to the plate, like you said, from wherever you are, to be the husband and the father that you can and should be, right? So I feel like that's not necessarily true for a lot of people, especially touring musicians. To do that, like you said, like to be on the plane and be like, can somebody help? My wife needs help and things like that. Do you find like that's something that came naturally to you, or that you had to learn kind of how to step up to that plate in that way?
I feel like I am uniquely suited to call out the troops in a way, because that's what I do with the band all the time. I mean, we've been a big band from the beginning, usually 7 to 8 pieces, which many people still think is completely insane, especially if you're not like already famous. It's a challenge, but it's worth it to create the sound that I think is a powerful thing. If you've ever seen the band live, it's the horns especially. It's like a very cool funk and folk thing coming together, which not a lot of people do.
No.
I will be the first to admit that financially, especially as the pandemic wiped out a lot of our income and gig possibilities, it's been very tough to keep up the balance between having shows and then taking enough time to be home.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have shows coming in regularly, it's harder to get your regular musicians signed on. It's harder to pay for the travel because there's not as much income coming in, blah, blah, blah. Travel costs went up, gig revenue went down. So a lot of us are really piecing it together. But the music is an obsession that goes far beyond anything that's healthy at this point. So it's just like, I have to do it. It's not really a choice. And also we have lovely fans who have kept up with us. I mean, that's really, really sweet. So hopefully we can make it work. I mean, right now I'm trying to deal with a situation where we're going to England and Denmark in August, and realizing like, okay, I'm going to be gone for 10 days. We're starting to kind of get into some of the cooler festivals. We played the Cambridge Folk Fest last year, which was one of the best things we've ever done. I mean, just so fun. And it's a really beautiful town, canals and all the universities.
The UK festivals are supposed to be completely insane.
They are really cool, though. I really wish they would pay more.
Yeah.
It's a challenge that we're trying to navigate. That's why God bless the Denmark and the Scandinavian folks. They have
so much
money for days.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm in a place right now where I guess you could say it's almost another fresh start, where I have to start coming to terms that if you don't do it 100 days a year, it really isn't enough.
Right.
And there's a sadness about that I'm trying to get through right now, just realizing, like, I'm not pulling my weight really enough right now.
Yeah.
Of course, like when the summer comes and you're like, woo, everything's great.
Right,
and then it's like the winter, you're like,
feast or famine.
Yeah. So it is really almost like seasonal work, and I'm trying to figure out a way to balance, like, not giving up completely, but also just like finding some other things that can stoke my passions and also be a responsible person or something, And my podcast is fun and that brings in something, but not really, so it's like,
it's
trying to find the way forward is a tricky one, because when you do something for 10 straight years, you kind of don't have a lot on your resume to be like, I can also do this. You're like, can you?
It's tough when you have, when you have a passion. Each passion and each art comes with its own pluses and minuses, right? So I'm a writer. I write poetry, and talking to my fiance, and he writes poetry and he also plays guitar. And he's like, the cool thing about guitar is you get into the flow state, right? Like you can just play, like he'll play for like 2 hours and like that he gets into that flow state. There's no flow state with poetry. However, not that poetry ever makes a lot of money, but there's other benefits to it. But the problematic thing about being a passionate musician is, like, it's tough. And especially if you want to make it your career, like you have to get creative, like you said, about different ways to make that pull your weight through the year.
Yeah, it's an ongoing journey. I think we've been luckier than most in that this has been, really my main job for a long time. And not a lot of musicians can say that.
No.
I think it also takes someone who's a little delusional.
You have to be.
To be like, no, some cool stuff's coming.
And
then it does. And sometimes
I understand.
you don't know.
I understand.
You both love musicians, so
I
it's just a matter of,
I get it, I really do, because that's me. I'm the delusional Pisces, and I'm like, don't worry guys, the money's coming.
Pisces,
the things,
baby.
exactly. And I'm like that, like, we're gonna be billionaires, don't worry about it, the things are coming. What I love about what you're doing too, Zach, is that you bring your fans in so beautifully on social media. And so I'm thinking back to a post I saw a couple weeks ago where you literally said, like, the pandemic hit us hard. We're trying to get more gigs. Can anybody hook us up? And I'm trying. It's not as glamorous as Denmark, but I'm trying to get you guys to Long Island over here. We got a big stage over here. We got some stages over here.
Where on Long Island?
Well, we're in Huntington. So they have the summer festival here in Huntington, but there's also the Paramount here in Huntington too. So I love, where we are in marketing. And so we deal with social media all the time. And when you can build that audience on social media, it really does help, I think, in such a positive way. And so I love that you were authentic and vulnerable and like, hey, we're struggling here a little bit. We need to get our name out. We need to get gigs, right? So what can you guys do? And because you've been so passionate for the last 10 years and built this, family around you of members of, extensions of your band that adore you, who knows where that will take you. And I love your authenticity. And I think that that's definitely one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you. I remember when your wife was going through all that and you posted about it on social media. And I think, like, there's a lot of musicians who take such a different stance, right? It's like they're a little bit more elitist, or they're trying to show this different personality. And you're like, no, this is who we are. And I think that is what makes Dustbowl Revival so special in so many ways.
Well, I think that's definitely one of the, at least, creative changes that we've tried to do in the last few albums, is really like mining what is happening personally and making what's happening in the world feel personal, and that's, working with a couple of amazing producers. Sam Kassirer, this guy out of Boston, helped us do the last full record, Is It Me, Is It You? Is It You, Is It Me? I can't even remember the name of our album. Is it You? Is It Me? Yeah. But he was basically really cool about choosing some of my more solo spare songs that normally would not get played or would be left off albums because there's no drum parts, there's no horn parts. Right. It's like, it's much more intimate. So like there's a song called Just One Song that we will sometimes go in the crowd and play acoustically that is so sort of the reason why I play music. It's about going to some strange random town and feeling like all these people are suddenly like your family. Yeah. And you didn't know them an hour and a half before. Music is the only thing that I've ever seen that really can bring people of all different walks of life into one little room and everyone feels kind of connected in some way. I mean, I guess you could say religion does that at times, but
music is religion. Music is
just
religion.
Believing in that one thing.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating. There's people who we've seen who are not okay with the gun control song, but they like come back anyway. Like our new singer LaShawn noticed that this guy who heckled us at a show for that song came back to another show.
Right, because you guys are just that good.
What is that guy with the beard doing here? I thought he hated us. Like, well, he probably just hates that one song.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so interesting.
Yeah,
he can separate. He can separate it out, and maybe you'll slowly get into him.
I think what we found out was that his wife is a big fan.
Yes,
and she's like, "Get your ass in the car. We're going to the Dustbowl show."
At this time, keep your mouth closed.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and you guys have a sound that nobody else out there has right now. I mean, really special. And your energy, I remember watching some of the early YouTubes that I saw of you guys, and I was like, wow, this guy's awesome. Like, you have such a, I want to say a real old school energy about you, music wise, that it's very rare to see nowadays with musicians. That is just so cool. You have a cool vibe about you. So as a fellow parent, I would love to know, how did having your daughter crack open a different part of you creatively and with your music?
Well, I think in a way she became like my new muse.
Yeah.
A lot of the songs recently are like almost singing to her or about her seeing the future and what that might mean. We released this EP last year called Set Me Free, and we put out this song called B for July, which I wrote sort of as a lot of this really horrible stuff was happening. And initially it was about almost like mourning something, and then it became about seeing this really cool future where we were out in Yosemite together, because that was like a special place for my wife and I, and we were able to do this video with the baby at Yosemite, and it was like really powerful and really special. And I mean, it's funny because she is becoming musical herself now, right? Where she's banging on her little piano and stuff. We joke that wouldn't it be fun if she was a musical prodigy? And I'm telling you, like, she helped me write a song yesterday.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Like, I was playing just some random stuff on the piano, and she, it's probably an accident.
No,
but she's literally playing the right notes in time with me on the top of the keyboard, and I'm like, okay, that's really cool. And then I played it again, and she did it again.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised. I mean, it's part of her makeup.
13 months.
It's in you. So we're all just a bunch of neurons, right? So it's in you. So whatever you passed on to her, that's in her. I mean, Olivia's boys, when they were little, they wouldn't slam on the piano. They would play, and they would come out with songs. And, you know, like we said, their dad is a musician too. So it's not surprising to me that she has that ability and that she has that ear. I don't, but I'm glad that she does. I mean, like, you know, it depends on who your parents are, and her parent is you.
Does your wife play music?
Not really. I mean, she likes to sing along. She's in some of the recordings we do of like background singers. She has as we like to joke, a Disney princess voice.
Got it. I love
that.
So
it's like a lot of like way up here.
Yeah. I love that.
What are you singing to your little girl for? What are they called? Lullabies.
Lullabies.
Well, it was funny because when she was really little, she was so used to hearing that song, like her song, that when she was really freaking out, especially if I was gone, my wife would literally just put on her song, and then she would immediately shut up.
That's
like
amazing.
She was like, "Oh yeah," she's like, "Play my tune." Great.
That's perfect.
But you know, she's gotten to the point where, she loves books a lot. So her favorite thing is to take all the library books from the chair, throw them on the ground, sit on the ground, look at all the pages really fast, go to the next one. And now, where the bedtime used to be kind of a long-winded process, she's like such a big girl now, where you'll hold her for a second and then she'll point at her crib and be like, "Yeah, I'm good."
Wow. That's
go.
Fortunate. That's awesome.
Now she gets up at 5:30 a.m., which isn't great. But you know, the bedtime, she's great at going to sleep.
I'm jealous.
What musicians inspired you as a kid?
Well, I mean, I grew up in Chicago. My dad is a huge music nut. And so I was definitely shown that music is important from a very young age. I don't know if I was necessarily like, oh, I really want to be like that guy. I don't think I ever grew up thinking I would be a musician at all, to be honest with you. I was always like, I'm going to be a writer. That was my whole thing. Because I went to school for creative writing, fiction. Okay. I thought I would be like a novelist, to be honest, or a playwright, which I still do. I write plays.
Yeah.
But if you want something even more financially insane, be a playwright.
That's my fiance
or
too.
poetry.
He writes plays. It's
poetry.
It's none of us know how to make money is really the problem.
So yeah, I think I did a lot of theater growing up, especially in high school and college, Shakespeare, you know, and just I think words really mattered. And I found that I was always I was in bands from about 13, 14 on.
Yeah.
Like more punk rock and blues and rock and roll stuff, which is funny because I feel like Dustbowl started more old school, like swing and bluegrassy, folky, and now is like almost kind of coming full circle to what I loved playing growing up, which is like funk and rock and roll and blues.
Yeah.
But you know, the thing I started playing first was a violin. I played classical violin for 10 years as a kid. I tend to stick with things far longer than is necessary, or that far longer than other kids.
Sure.
Like at our school, I don't know if you know what the Waldorf school system is.
Yep.
Me and my sister are K through 12 Waldorf kids.
Got it.
That makes sense in a way. I
might explain things.
My kids are Montessori kids. So
I was gonna say.
So they have you play the violin at third grade.
Wow.
You don't have a choice. So I played it. Most kids dropped it within a year, and I was like, I want to do it for 10 years. Did I actually like it? I don't even know, to be honest. There's this running joke with my parents that I realized years later. I was like, Dad, why did you let me just quit the violin? I could have been like really good if I kept up with it. And my parents were like, you wanted to be in a rock band and you didn't seem to really like the violin. So we're like, let's sell it and get an electric bass.
Good parenting.
My parents are like so supportive to the point of like, is this too supportive?
Maybe a reality check at some point from someone.
Yeah.
Like you spent 10 years paying for lessons, and I was in orchestra and chamber.
But it paid off because I mean now you have an amazing ear for everything that you do.
It taught you a lot that was not violin specific.
I think I'm only now starting to appreciate the power of classical music as I will play a lot of stuff for my daughter in the mornings. She was born on Mozart's birthday.
Well, there you go. So she is a prodigy. There you go.
But I feel like the electric bass was what I played after the violin. And I still kind of have a bass forward guitar approach. I'm a self-taught guitar player. No one should ever attempt to play how I play, but it's
it works.
It's a kind of a percussive like I'm playing the bass lines under in a way. And the bass does not get the appreciation that it probably should. I remember as a teenager, and my parents were like, "Why do you want to play the bass?" And we go into this guitar shop, and I was like, "No, I need to get my own bass,"
Yeah.
And the nerd guitar tech was like, guys, every band needs a bass.
True.
He'll always have work.
A gig. Yeah.
Work. Yeah.
Like people will always want him in the band.
I mean, it is true. It is true. Yeah.
Because usually like the person who's like the worst at guitar plays bass or something,
Yeah.
It's like a default position.
Like Paul McCartney never chose to play bass. He just sort of like accidentally was the bassist in the band.
So when you are drawn to music, like because you're such a words guy, but you're also a music guy, are you kind of a lyrics first approach or like a music first approach?
Sometimes there'll be like a phrase or an idea that will sort of hang in the air. I'm playing a solo set, which is pretty rare for me at the end of the week at this place called McCabe's, which is like a legendary old guitar shop that has a venue in the back.
Cool.
I haven't played like solo in public for a long time. So it's a little scary, and I'm trying to figure out which songs do I want to focus on. And there's like songs that are old friends that you miss, that you're like, man, this never got its due.
Yeah.
And I'd love to play this. Like there's this song that I always love playing called it's hard dreaming big in a small town. Like that, like a phrase like that.
Yeah.
A lot of kids I went to college with at University of Michigan come from these little farm towns, and they're like the best and the brightest of their little town.
Yeah.
And you could feel that pressure on these kids, and it's like a lot of them, it's like they're the first person to ever go to college in their entire family history, and I think a lot of our country is, we've toured through it for so many years. It's a lot of these big dreaming folks in these small towns who are trying to like make it happen and sometimes can't, so like something like that. I don't know. I feel like it tends to be a melody or something that sounds interesting over a set of chords. As I have started writing more on piano, things have changed in how I think songs develop, because there is a beauty to not knowing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like on an instrument fully.
Yeah. Where
you can accidentally, I mean, it's what happened with the song that my daughter accidentally helped me write.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know what's happening. This chord sounds cool. And then she was like, I'm like, whoa, yes.
Yes. Yeah, I love that.
Now, she probably just banged on a couple random notes, but it worked. And
I love
it
that.
was really cool. So during the pandemic, my wife's uncle in Ohio posted on Facebook like, hey, we have this beautiful 1918 Steinway baby grand piano, mahogany finish. It's been in our family for 100 years. We had it completely restored, 7-8 years ago. And we're downsizing, we're retiring, etc. So we need this out of here in like a couple months. And they, tried to sell it for a decent amount of money because it's a family heirloom. It's the middle of 2020. No one has any money. And I send him a message sort of as a joke being like, listen, Uncle Frank, no one in your entire family plays music except me. I'll pay for shipping. How about that? Yeah. And he's like, look, this is a very valuable instrument. Someone will buy it. Yeah. And nobody bought it. And then he had like a week to go to get out of that house. And he's like, all right, you'll pay for shipping, huh? And all of a sudden, this big old piano showed up at our house.
Amazing story.
And it's definitely changed a lot of how I write. And I mean, 2 of the songs off our latest EP are piano songs. You know,
I love that.
It's created a challenge live because we don't tour with a keyboard or anything, and I'm not really a piano player. So, like when I've done it live, I'm like holding on by the seat of my pants.
Yeah.
And also like my muscle core is not there. So like when you're really jamming on the piano, after 2 songs, you're like, oh my God.
Newfound respect for Ben Folds. Yeah.
Oh my God. Those guys are insane.
So Zach, if you are going through, or somebody's listening to this, going through a fresh start, what would be some wise words that you can impart to them?
It gets better, maybe, especially if it's a start that's forced upon you, that is really a tough thing that you're dealing with, you know, that if you have a creative outlet, if you have something that brings you joy, man, that is a life-saving thing. You know, if I didn't have music and stuff, like not to be morbid, but you see why people go out and kill people or go crazy. It's like they have no outlet to channel the hurt and the confusion and the anger and the you know, for me it was a lot of like existential, like, why is this happening to my wife? Like, why, like, who made this part of our life story, you know, like that my wife doesn't get to be with her child for the first part of its, you know, life. I mean, that's not fair. And she'll always kind of mourn that first couple weeks. And thankfully the hospital, even during COVID time, let the baby come into the ICU and let her hold that baby. And that was like, you know, a really powerful thing, because even though me and JJ are best buds, as soon as she laid on mom, it was like peace. You know? And that was a really important thing, and I felt like things were going to be okay when that happened. You know,
I love that.
And you know, I think if you have something that you can create and help you process the thing you're going through, just devote yourself to that when possible, because I think it's storytelling is about telling important stories, you know. Nothing wrong with a fun weird love song, but you know, the great songwriters of our time dive a little deeper than that.
You
know? Agreed.
And they know that everybody just wants to be seen, right? And the most important question we ask people: what was the last thing that you ate and truly loved?
Well, I do love to cook, and I had some friends over. We had some friends over, and we had these snow crab legs that were like in our freezer from this fish market that I found. And if there's anything better than like steamed crab legs, I've never tasted it.
No, I agree.
So I made like just a really good, you know, tomato sauce with some shiitake mushrooms, garlic, crab on top.
Sounds amazing.
It was pretty damn tasty. And
I would like that now.
I really wish the crab wasn't $40.
Yeah, but that'd be nice. Yeah. So we're obviously going to share all of the links and, you know, everything in the show notes. And obviously you have your podcast. What's the best way for people to listen to the music and support you guys?
Yeah, dustbowlrevival.com is our website. You know, we're doing some fun shows coming up in the East Coast next week. Sadly not New York, but
next time.
Philly, DC, you know, around that area. and then going up the West Coast in April. And yeah, we're on Spotify and Apple Music and all the places. If folks want to hear the whole crazy journey musically, I mean, there's a lot there. I mean, we've put out 5-6 albums at this point. So if you listen to stuff from 7 years ago, you'd be like, wait a second, which band is this? And I think that it's cool. I think you can see the evolution. We've had various lady singers and horn players and people. We had violin and mandolin for many years. Now we have a little more of a funky electric guitar situation. We have a brand new singer who's, I think, a star, to be honest. So my hope is that people can rediscover us as we keep on going. And that's been a challenge. I think some people, when they see a lineup change or honestly, our behavior changed during the pandemic, where people just don't go out to shows like they used to.
Yeah.
And that's been a struggle to convince people, like, hey, would you like to go to a nightclub on a Wednesday?
Drawing them back out of the house is tough.
In the winter?
Yeah.
You have to put real pants on is the thing.
Yeah.
And they're like, no.
No.
So we're trying to get people back into live music consumption, because I think it's important for your soul.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Yeah,
very much.
And your music is just beyond. And I mean, obviously, I'm a huge fan, but it fills a part of my soul. It fills a part of a lot of people's souls, because it's
awesome.
It's different. It's not the same thing that you usually hear, and you can hear your energy and your soul in it. And I think that's beautiful. So I am just so grateful that you took time out to talk to us today and share so many of your stories. So thank you for being here. And we're so excited about everything you guys have going on.
I appreciate you. If you want to listen to my podcast, which I will briefly say, it's very fun. It's been on for 5 years, 130 episodes.
Yeah, amazing.
The Show on the Road is what it's called. It's on all the podcast stuff. But yeah, I mean, I've been able to talk to a lot of my heroes, songwriting wise and performer wise, which is a unique, kind of fun journey, because most of the time, if you admire someone and you come up to them briefly at a show or a festival, you're like, hey man, you're great. And then you just walk away.
Yeah. Right.
You know? And then way I can be like, hey, so what's the deal with your mom and you?
That's the only reason we have a podcast.
Yeah, pretty much.
To talk to people. So we get it. We really do.
We really get it.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to today's story. We're always here and we're proud of you. Until next time, brave one.
A Fresh Story is brought to you by Fresh Starts Registry, the first and only platform for everything you need to start again. You can read the show notes and learn more about today's episode at freshstartsregistry.com/podcast.